Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, December 10, 2024. President Joe Biden defends his record on the economy, saying of his approach to grow the economy from the middle out and the bottom up. 4 years later, we have proof the playbook is, at least now, working. President Biden also compares what he has done with what President-elect Donald Trump and Republicans in Congress are promising. House passes a bill that would block an Energy Department regulation on efficiency standards for washing machines. House starts work on the annual Pentagon Policy and Programs bill called the NDAA, or National Defense Authorization Act. We'll talk about it with Politico's senior defense reporter Connor O'Brien. White House gives an update on policy towards Syria after the overthrow of longtime leader Bashar al-Assad and what's next for U.S. troops stationed there. President-elect Trump's national security nominees continue meeting with senators, including Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary, Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, and Kash Patel for FBI Director. And a U.S. House hearing on drones of unknown origin spotted flying over New Jersey. Story from Reuters. U.S. President Joe Biden touted his administration's economic record and warned against the reprise of Republican trickle-down economics during Donald Trump's second term in what could be his final speech on the economy at Washington's Brookings Institution on Tuesday. In his speech, which comes a month after bruising election defeats for the Democrats driven by voters' concerns about inflation, Biden argued that his push to boost investments in infrastructure, manufacturing, and neglected communities averted a bigger economic crisis and laid the groundwork for continued growth. That was the article from Reuters. Here's President Biden at the Brookings Institution.
During my presidency, we created 60 million new jobs in America. Will the next president create jobs, or like Herbert Hoover, be the only president to lose jobs in his administration? During my presidency, will we see the lowest average unemployment rate of any administration in 50 years? Will the unemployment be higher or lower in the next 4 years? We have had a strong economic growth of 3% on average on a yearly basis. Will the next president have a stronger or weaker economic growth? And inflation. Yes, inflation. We're battling through worldwide effects of the pandemic, Putin's war in Ukraine, and supply chain disruptions. I'm leading the next president with an inflation rate that's near 2%. Where will inflation be at the end of the next president's term? Look, these are simple, well-established economic benchmarks used to measure the strength of any economy, the success or failure of any president's 4 years in office. They're not political or rhetorical opinions. They're just facts. Simple facts, as President Reagan called them, stubborn facts. And one more fact as I prepare to leave office. You know, there is no country on earth better positioned to lead the world in the years to come than America. Think about what stunned me. And again, I'm going to say something outrageous. I have as much experience in foreign policy as any president in history of the United States has had. I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. Anyway, I spent a lot of time. I know all of them. Well, the decisions we make over the next 4 years have been transformative to the nation. But I tell you what stunned me, and I'm not being a hyper-American here. I can't name a single country in the world that doesn't think. I'll put it this way. If we're not leading the world, who does? Not a joke. I'm not being wise guy. If we do not lead the world, what nation leads the world? Who pulls Europe together? Who tries to pull the Middle East together? How do we do the Indian Ocean? What do we do in Africa? We, the United States, lead the world. And you all are extremely experienced women and men. You know many of these leaders. You know many of these countries. Find me one that says we're not, or wish we weren't. Look, my hope and belief is that the decisions and investments are now so deeply rooted in the nation, that's going to be politically costly and economically unsound for the next president to disrupt or cut.
President Joe Biden today at the Brookings Institution. Story from Politico. Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters he will be talking with incoming President Donald Trump about the party's reconciliation strategy this weekend, in addition to meeting with committee chairs on the topic Tuesday night. Incoming Senate Majority Leader John Thune and other Republicans are proposing a two-step strategy that would include passing a border and energy bill early next year and then turning to a massive tax package. But some Republicans, including House Ways and Means Chair Jason Smith, have been critical of that strategy, believing it should be one package. That was from Politico. Senator Thune spoke about this at a news conference today.
At the retreat last week, you talked about border security, energy, defense, and the first reconciliation package. But what about some of the DOGE recommendations or spending reforms, deficit reduction? Does that move in the first package or the second package? What's your vision on how to move that?
I'm a big fan of DOGE. I mean, I think that this is long overdue. We need a good scrubbing of the federal government. But I do believe that it's going to take us a bit of a time for them to, as they stand up that operation, take a hard look, scrutinize government operations, and figure out where we can achieve savings and efficiencies to be able to put that together into a legislative package. So that's why, in my view, it makes sense for us to move quickly on things we know we can do quickly, border, defense, energy, and then come back with another package that would address some of the savings that can be achieved through reductions in costs in various agencies and bureaucracies and government and programs, and then also deal with the expiring Trump tax cuts in a package later this year. But I think we can do both. We've got an opportunity to have a couple of different chances at a reconciliation package that would achieve all those objectives.
Senator John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, currently Minority Whip, the incoming Majority Leader, speaking to reporters in the U.S. Capitol building after the regular Tuesday party lunches. He led the news conference because the current Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, fell during the lunch, and Senator Thune was asked about that.
There was word that Senator McConnell may have fallen at lunch. What did you witness? Is he okay?
He is fine. He's in his office, and any other questions about Senator McConnell will refer to his staff.
That's Senator John Thune. NBC News reporter Frank Thorpe writing on X, Leader McConnell tripped following lunch. He sustained a minor cut to the face and sprained his wrist. He's been cleared to resume his schedule, according to a spokesperson from his office. The U.S. House today passed a bill that, as Fox News puts it, is aimed at pushing back on the Biden administration's green energy standards for household appliances. The bill is titled the Liberty in Laundry Act and would block an Energy Department regulation that would put in place stricter energy standards for residential clothes washers, such as washing machines. Congressman Jeff Duncan, Republican of South Carolina, chair of the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee overseeing this bill, spoke in favor during the House floor debate.
This bill protects the affordability and quality and choice for Americans to decide for themselves what suits their needs best. Thanks to radical climate policies, Americans will spend 34% more on appliances today than they did just a decade ago. These appliances are not only more expensive, they offer lesser quality, with fewer features Americans rely on and shorter lifespans. This legislation will prevent the DOE from enforcing standards for the clothes washers unless they are technologically feasible and economically justified, are not likely to result in additional costs to the consumer, and will result in significant conservation of energy. The American people have spoken. They cannot afford and they don't want more of the same. They have overwhelmingly rejected the Democrat Party and their pandering to the radical climate lobby. Everyday Americans are tired of record inflation, higher energy costs, and just the struggle they have every day to make ends meet. This legislation addresses kitchen table issues for Americans and for their families. The out-of-touch policies of the Biden administration are why the American people decided to elect President Donald J. Trump to a second term.
Congressman Jeff Duncan, Republican from South Carolina, today on the House floor. Congressman Frank Pallone, Democrat from New Jersey, ranking member in the Energy and Commerce Committee, spoke against the bill.
These efficiency standards create certainty for manufacturers, and they protect consumers from rising costs. And in the case of these laundry machine standards, they also reduce water use, a benefit that could greatly aid drought-prone regions around the nation. What's more, Mr. Speaker, the Biden administration's energy efficiency actions are projected to save Americans $1 trillion and reduce greenhouse gas pollution by more than 2.5 billion metric tons over the next 30 years. The laundry machine standard that this bill guts is on track to save Americans $18 billion on their utility bills over the next 30 years as well. But today's Republican Party is unpersuaded by things like facts and cost savings. With this bill, Republicans are proving that their vow to lower costs was nothing more than an empty campaign promise. This legislation actively works to raise Americans' energy bills, all so they can curry favor with their special interest friends and do the bidding of their fossil fuel industry friends.
Congressman Frank Pallone, Democrat from New Jersey, today on the House floor. The House passed this bill by a vote of 215 to 200, mostly party lines, 6 Democrats joining the Republicans in voting yes. House today also passed a bill that was debated yesterday, the Water Resources Development Act. E&E News writes the bipartisan bill would guide the Army Corps of Engineers' work in the coming years on water resources, from flood control to coastal resiliency to navigation and dams. It would authorize 17 new projects, some of which have been in the works for years. It would also direct the agency to carry out more than 200 feasibility studies for other potential projects to ease flooding, improve wastewater infrastructure, and address other water challenges made worse by climate change. That was from E&E News. Bill passing the House 399 to 18. All 18 no votes coming from Republicans. Bill now heads to the Senate. From Reuters, U.S. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy defended plans to buy a rising number of electric delivery vehicles and said he did not plan to return funding earmarked for zero-emission models without legislation from Congress. In 2023, Congress gave USPS $3 billion as part of the $430 billion climate bill to buy EVs and charging infrastructure, including $1.2 billion for electric vehicles. It plans to buy some 66,000 electric vehicles by 2028. That was from Reuters. Postmaster General DeJoy also talking about the overall deficit, budget deficit in the Postal Service, $9.5 billion net loss for fiscal year 2024. That follows a $6.5 billion loss in 2023. He testified before the House Oversight and Accountability Committee. Ranking member Jamie Raskin of Maryland asking him when the red will turn into black.
Mr. DeJoy, you said the Postal Service would break even by 2023, last year, or 2024. We're in December now. Under your leadership, the Postal Service has increased the deficit by 900%. Do you still realistically expect the Postal Service to break even this year or next year, or when will it break even?
I expect to drive $5 billion of cost out over the next 24 months and grow revenue $3 to $4 billion over the next 24 months. I intend to try and negotiate with someone on our retirement plan benefits, and how they get calculated and how they get invested. We just filed for with OPM to look at how we've had like a 700% increase in terms of the people that will be on the plan. That is inaccurate. We have investment issues. We have workman's comp issues. But these are things that most of them will take actions from this Congress. I can't do this myself. But what I can do, we are doing. We're going to drive out costs. We're going to grow revenue. And this is why we did not put a forecast in for when the break even was, because it's not something we can do ourselves. All agencies don't put in how they're going to use it, if they're going to break their budget or not. We put it in at that particular point in time for a variety of reasons, but we're working to drive out costs and grow revenue.
So do you regret now having set that break-even point at 2023 or 2024 when you first set this out?
So there's a lot of things I regret sitting here. Okay, I was here 3.5 months. I had projections. I had an understanding of what the operation was and should have been doing. Right, I had a board. We sat down and we put something together that said something that had been that lost $100 billion over the last 10 years, right? Which and was more broke than one could even imagine. Okay, we put a number together and we went for it, and we got a lot done, and we're still getting a lot done.
U.S. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy testifying before the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, questioned by the ranking Democrat Jamie Raskin. There were similar exchanges on the Postal Service budget with many other members of the committee. In one case, Rich McCormick, Republican of Georgia, questioned him, and Louis DeJoy covered his ears while being criticized. You can find the video of that clip and the entire hearing at our video library at cspan.org. Wall Street today, the Dow down 154, NASDAQ down 49, S&P down 17. U.S. House has begun work on the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. It's the Pentagon's policy and programs bill. Today, the House passed a resolution that sets out the rules for debate, amendments, and a vote later this week. This is one of the last major high-priority bills of the 118th Congress. House Republicans released the text last weekend authorizing $895 billion for fiscal year 2025. Politico's defense reporter Connor O'Brien wrote an article with the headline, "Defense Bill Could Hit Last-Minute Snag Over Transgender Provision." We'll talk to him in a couple of minutes about that. First, here is House Speaker Mike Johnson discussing the NDAA at a news conference today.
You heard about the NDAA. We're proud of this product. It was released over the weekend, and it includes critical wins for our troops and for our country at a very important time. I want to thank Chairman Mike Rogers of the House Armed Services Committee and all the committee members and all the staff for their really hard work on the bill. We spent a lot of time and effort working on it because our service members and their families deserve our best efforts. That's why we made landmark investments in their quality of life, as you heard, with a 14.5% pay raise for junior service members. It's really important right now, and improved housing for our military families and other benefits. And it's also why we stopped funds from going to CRT in our military academies. We banned TRICARE from prescribing treatments that would ultimately sterilize our kids, and we gutted the DEI bureaucracy. And because we believe in peace through strength, we blocked the Biden administration's plan to reduce the number of U.S. Special Forces. We supported the deployment of the National Guard at the border. We expanded U.S. joint military exercises with Israel, and we increased funding for U.S. defense initiatives in the Indo-Pacific, and that includes Taiwan. At the same time, while we plussed up those other accounts, we cut $31 billion in bloated Pentagon bureaucracy, obsolete weapons, and inefficient programs. A lot of that will continue into the new year, and those are some very important innovations. The safety and security of the American people is our top priority, and this year's NDAA ensures our military has the resources and the capabilities needed to remain the most powerful fighting force on the planet. I look forward to voting for it later this week, and I think you'll have a large vote on the House floor in affirmation of all this.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, at a news conference today. Later in the day, during debate on the House floor on the rules for debate for the NDAA later in the week, Congresswoman Becca Balint, Democrat from Vermont, spoke about provision that she and other Democrats oppose.
This is a message to all my colleagues voting on the NDAA and to Americans who might be watching. You are being misled. Our most cynical Republican colleagues are telling you that Democrats are pushing for sterilization and surgery for kids in military families. Let me be absolutely clear. This is not true. That's not what's going on here. Here's what is true. TRICARE currently covers appropriate gender-affirming hormone therapy for all military dependents, period. The kind of care that millions of doctors support as safe and effective. Now, Republicans want to restrict this, but only for trans kids. They are targeting trans kids and their families and saying what kind of health care is appropriate for them. This is a very tiny percentage of the population, and they're using this opportunity to scapegoat them. Now, we know that appropriate and medically recommended care saves lives. We know this. It's well documented. Why wouldn't we want to do everything that we can to save the lives of children? Military families, and I am a member of a military family. I was born on an Army base in Germany when my dad served in the military. Military families carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. They shouldn't have to worry about whether their kids can receive the life-saving care that they need. And our service members have enough to worry about. Why do Republicans want to make it even more complicated for them by limiting health care options for their families. I'm here to say it absolutely loud and clear. Military families deserve the health care that they need. And this includes gender-affirming care options for their children. Service members across this country and across the world deserve so much better than what they are getting from House Republicans.
Congresswoman Becca Balint, Democrat from Vermont, on the House floor. Joining us now to discuss the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, is Connor O'Brien, senior defense reporter with Politico. Thank you for being with us. What is in this bill, all 1,800 pages of it?
A very, very large bill, price tag of about $895 billion, which is the amount that President Biden requested, and it's the amount that lawmakers agreed to when they set up the debt limit deal last year. And it's a really sprawling bill, kind of touches pretty much everything, and the defense enterprise being kind of all-encompassing as it is. I should say it's not a funding bill. Congress is still going to have to resolve that through the appropriations process, in all likelihood next year. But basically, this kind of lays out the broad priorities for the Pentagon budget. Ships, planes, things like that. This year, the Congress pushed back and proposed buying a second Virginia-class attack submarine when the Navy only wanted to buy one, a third Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, adding to the Navy's shipbuilding budget. There was a proposal pushed by the House Armed Services Committee. They had a task force on military quality of life to expand benefits and pay, particularly for junior enlisted troops, a measure that they think needs to be done to improve recruiting when the military is competing with the private sector. So the highlight of that, I think that is going to be a selling point for a lot of members, is there's a 14.5% pay raise just for junior enlisted, the junior most ranks of the enlisted force. And then for the entire military, there's a 4.5% pay raise. Other kind of things, there's been a brewing fight between governors and the National Guard and Congress and the Pentagon over what to do with National Guard that perform space functions and whether to put them in the Space Force. The Congress ended up allowing that plan proposed by the Air Force to move those units, even without the consent of the governor, into the Space Force. That could be a protracted fight. Governors are not happy about that and are kind of they haven't said exactly what they will do, but they're threatening legal action. So that has been kind of an interesting turf war. So it really touches on a lot of things. There are a lot of pieces that members can take away from this. It usually gets broad bipartisan support. There's some partisan political fights that could weigh on this, but I think we'll see how it plays out over the next day or two.
One of those partisan fights that you wrote an article about at Politico.com has to do with transgender policy. Is it enough to sink the bill?
I think we saw this today where the House Republicans held together and were able to pass the rule to start debating the defense bill, which means it only needs a straight majority to pass this bill whenever it comes up, be that Wednesday or Thursday. And I think it will get 218. It will get some Democrats. The question is how many. Now, the issue that you referenced, which is a provision that was included at the insistence of Speaker Mike Johnson, prohibits TRICARE, the military healthcare system, from covering certain medical treatments. And this is the text of the bill says that might result in sterilization of a child under 18 years old. This has been a hot button issue, at the state level. it was put in there over Democratic opposition. And we're still waiting to hear how the ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, Adam Smith, is going to vote on this over that provision. The argument that is that, this is bad policy. This is potentially preventing life-saving care for some minors with gender dysphoria. And that, they feel like Republicans threw a poison pill in there. Now, that's not the end of the story. Democrats are going to have to weigh that against the rest of the bill. And, politically, they just got off a cycle where they were relentlessly attacked by Republicans over transgender issues and saying that they were extreme. And it is going to be, they're going to be hard pressed to, I think, oppose, everything else in the bill, including, military pay raise and, things that might be good for their district over this issue. So it doesn't appear that leadership is going to be whipping against this. So I think it's going to very much come down to the individuals and how they feel about the issues and how they feel about their voting in their district. And so we'll see. I think it does have 218. The question is, how much beyond that does it have?
We're talking with Connor O'Brien, defense reporter with Politico. This is one of the last must-pass bills, as they call it. Has the White House weighed in? We're getting near the end of the year.
We haven't heard from the White House yet. Of course, they were very dissatisfied with some of the earlier iterations. The House bill that passed essentially along party lines. More or less along party lines after it was loaded up with a lot of conservative social provisions. The White House hadn't threatened to veto the bill up to that point, but then once action started on the House floor, started loading it up with things on abortion, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that became a point at which the administration wouldn't have signed that bill. I think a lot of Democrats in the White House will be looking at this in terms of what they got versus what they were able to keep out in terms of Republican priorities. So we saw that the White House has to weigh the good against the bad in their opinion. In previous years, President Biden signed a defense bill that undid his own vaccine mandate for the military. They may have to sign something where they don't they have some high profile losses, and the defense authorization bill has been enacted into law every year for over 6 decades. And I think a lot of people are wary about breaking that streak. So I think that might weigh heavily there.
Connor O'Brien, senior defense reporter with Politico. You can find his articles at Politico.com and on X at Connor O'Brien, NH. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And as the debate and votes on the NDAA plays out over the next couple of days on the House floor, you can follow it live on C-SPAN television or on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app. And when the Senate takes it up, of course, also on the free app and on C-SPAN 2 television, both streamed at cspan.org. Washington Today continues in a moment.
The House will be in order.
This year, C-SPAN celebrates 45 years of covering Congress like no other. Since 1979, we've been your primary source for Capitol Hill, providing balanced, unfiltered coverage of government, taking you to where the policy's debated and decided, all with the support of America's cable companies. C-SPAN, 45 years and counting, powered by cable.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast wherever you find your podcast and on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app. Story from Al Jazeera. Israel's defense minister says the country aims to establish a sterile defense zone in southern Syria after Israeli forces seized territory and unleashed a wave of airstrikes on the country following the removal of President Bashar al-Assad. Israeli troops in recent days have moved into the demilitarized zone inside Syria, including the Syrian side of the strategic Mount Hermon that overlooks Damascus, where it took over an abandoned Syrian military post. Israel Defense Minister Israel Katz on Tuesday said he ordered Israel's forces to create a sterile defense zone in southern Syria that would be enforced without a permanent Israeli presence. Katz did not elaborate, but said the zone would prevent the establishment and organization of terror in Syria. That was from Al Jazeera. White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby spoke to reporters today about the United States assessment of the post-Assad Syria.
It remains an open question exactly how this is going to play out politically. As you know, there are multiple rebel groups that are in Damascus right now, multiple opposition groups that are involved now. And as the president said, they're all saying the right things, but we're going to have to watch and see what they actually do. We want to make sure that at the end of this, whatever the governing authority looks like, whatever institutions are preserved, and again, we noted that the opposition groups have made clear that they want the Syrian army, for instance, to stay intact. That the Syrian people get to determine what their future looks like, and that whatever processes are put in place, they are Syrian-led, and we want to assist in that, and we will certainly do that internally and externally. Internally to the region, we have the ability to communicate with the opposition groups, and we'll continue to do that. And we also, as I already highlighted, will maintain open communications with counterparts and interlocutors in the region, but outside Syria. We want to make sure that the aspirations of the Syrian people are fully met. They have suffered enough over 14 years, and we're going to be working very, very hard to do that, particularly through existing UN-led processes. But it's got to be, ultimately, it's got to be a Syrian-led evolution here towards better and more representative governance. We believe it is in our interest, our national security interest, that Syria be stable and secure, and that, again, the Syrian people are able to determine their future. It's in our interest in the region. It is also in our interest that we continue to put pressure on ISIS. And so the counter-ISIS mission by our troops in Syria continues. The president talked about a wave of strikes we conducted on Sunday, 75 somewhat strikes on ISIS camps and facilities. You can expect that that kind of activity will continue. We don't want to give ISIS an opportunity to exploit what's going on. They love nothing more than ungoverned space. And back to my first point, we want to make sure that all of Syria is properly governed and that the Syrian people, again, have a say in that. So the pressure on ISIS will absolutely continue, because that, too, is very much in our national security interests, and we'll stay at that.
The White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby during a virtual audio news conference today. He also said the U.S. is still working to get more information about the whereabouts of Austin Tice, the American journalist captured in Syria 12 years ago. Financial Times has a story: Russia is holding on to the main naval and air bases it uses as staging points for the Mediterranean and Africa, even as it pulls its forces back from smaller outposts in Syria following the overthrow of ally Bashar al-Assad. From roll call, the House Republican Steering Committee on Monday, in a surprise vote, recommended Congressman Brian Mast of Florida, an Army veteran known for his sharp tongue and grievance politics, to be the next chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the office of Speaker Mike Johnson confirmed. Mast, a Ukraine aid opponent, has had sharp disagreements with Ranking Member Gregory W. Meeks, Democrat of New York, during business meetings. He was a late entrant in the race for the gavel, beating out 3 more senior members to win a contest whose results surprised watchers. That was from Roll Call. Congressman Mast spoke to reporters today on Capitol Hill.
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Did I say anything about your election?
Yeah.
Say the question. Care to say anything about your election?
Just one, I thank the colleagues that I was competing against. We all elevate each other with the ideas that we have. We work together and we'll continue to work together on committee. And, we're going to go out there and we're going to be a busy committee. We're going to take a look at everything going on within State Department, especially in light of this exiting Biden administration, and understand that everything has to be a dollar or a diplomat that puts America first. If it's not a dollar or a diplomat that's in the State Department and it's not putting America first, then you could chalk that up under work that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to want to see absolutely gone. So that'll be the focus, getting a complete and total reauthorization of the State Department for the first time since 2002. That's the bar.
Any plans that you have in the first 100 days that you like to work with the Trump administration on that you realistically can get done?
Yeah, I think some of those things that you hit the ground running on are a firing authority, and let's be specific on some of these things. You had people in State Department that were authorizing drag shows in Ecuador or authorizing expanding atheism in other countries like Nepal at $500,000 a clip. You look at these programs that were existing out there, people that were signing their names onto supporting these kind of things and wasting the American taxpayer dollars on this. It's time for you to, hit the door. And so it's a firing authority, it's a hiring authority to make sure that there's a seamless transition for members of the military to move over to the State Department and become diplomats after carrying a rifle. It's making sure that you look at getting rid of some of these offices that are unnecessary, like, the DEI chief and the Office of DEI. It's making sure that you take a look at all of these potentially wasteful grants. Not all of them are wasteful, but some of them are. And that Congress be noticed on these grants, just like we're noticed on foreign military sales. These are things that we can do to hit the ground running.
Congressman Brian Mast, Republican of Florida, the next chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee in the Congress that starts in January, meeting today with reporters in the U.S. Capitol building. A story from Axios. Congressman Brett Guthrie, Republican of Kentucky, won the race to lead the powerful House Energy and Commerce Committee next year, replacing retiring Chair Kathy McMorris Rogers, Republican of Washington State. President-elect Donald Trump's nominees for Defense Secretary and other national security posts were back on Capitol Hill today. ABC News writes that Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary faced significant headwinds after new allegations of financial mismanagement, sexual impropriety, and other disqualifying behavior were reported by The New Yorker. But he may be gaining back some ground. On Monday, key Republican senator appeared to soften her view toward Hegseth. Senator Joni Ernst, member of the Armed Services Committee, and like Hegseth, a combat veteran, previously said she wasn't ready to back Hegseth. But after their second meeting on Monday, she said she'd be supporting him through this process, though she would not say whether she would ultimately vote in favor of his confirmation. Hegseth said Tuesday he wouldn't speak for Ernst, but, quote, "I appreciate the time, amazing conversation, foreign affairs, combat vet, welcome, all of our insight." He spoke between meetings in the Hart Senate office building, reporting from ABC News. Senator John Cornyn, Republican of Texas, told reporters after his meeting with Pete Hegseth that he would vote to confirm.
Did you address any of the sexual misconduct allegations against him, the financial mismanagement that people have accused him of? Did that come up in your conversation?
Well, it did, but a lot of this has been anonymous, and I think what we will be able to do, either through the background check, the FBI, or through the hearing itself, is to see whether these are anonymous or whether anybody will claim responsibility. I think, as again, what I learned during the Kavanaugh hearings is that there are a lot of people who will make anonymous claims, but will not show up and be accountable for that. So I think it's important to give him a fair process, but we also need to have a process where we can get all the facts out before we have to make our decisions.
Could you guys talk about...
Do you think that Senator Ernst and others who have hesitations with him should face a primary if they vote no ultimately?
I think it's premature. I know Senator Ernst and others who have said they want to see the process through, believe firmly in upholding their oath to defend and protect the Constitution. This role of advice and consent is part of that. The founders never believed that there would be a rubber stamp. So I respect the fact that Senator Ernst has met with Mr. Hegseth twice now and said that she will support him through the process. We'll see how that turns out.
Senator, did you guys discuss the role of women in combat? Did he clarify his remarks on that?
He talked a little bit about that. He said basically he thought the standard ought to be the same, and if women can meet the standard, that they should be able to participate. To me, that's kind of a common sense approach.
Senator John Cornyn, Republican from Texas, meeting with reporters after his meeting with President-elect Trump's intended defense secretary nominee, Pete Hegseth. The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, met today with President-elect Trump's expected nominee for Secretary of State, another U.S. Senator, Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida. Senator Schumer spoke about it after.
And on Senator Rubio, I met with President-elect Trump's nominee for Secretary of State. We had a good and productive meeting. The Senate's going to do a thorough review of all of the President-elect's nominees. This meeting was part of that process. We had good discussions about Ukraine, the Middle East, Haiti, and China. I expressed my concerns with President Trump wavering on long-standing U.S. foreign policy commitments like NATO, Ukraine, and Taiwan. And of course, on China, I talked to him about my meeting with President Xi, and I hope he continues to focus on stopping the flow of fentanyl and the precursor drugs that China sends over, establishing economic reciprocity that lets American firms compete as fairly in China as they compete here. But we have to go through the process. So, I look forward to seeing Senator Rubio's hearing in the new year. I've worked closely with him in the past. We've had a good relationship. I think he's qualified for the role, and I certainly don't start out with any negative disposition. If Rubio's confirmed as next Secretary of State, I hope we can work together to further the legacy of American diplomacy and investment around the world.
The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, at a news conference today. And if Senator Marco Rubio is confirmed, Fox News writes that President-elect Trump is pressing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to name his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, to fill Senator Rubio's seat in the Sunshine State. Fox Digital has learned Laura Trump was recently co-chair of the Republican National Committee. President-elect Donald Trump's pick for FBI Director Kash Patel also continued making the rounds on the Senate side of the Capitol. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, Republican of Oklahoma, gave his support after meeting with that nominee.
Senator, how was your meeting?
It was good, great. Kash is, doing what he needs to do, get on the Hill, earn the vote of senators. And as I've said before, the game up here is not to put yeses, it's to keep no's off the board. And Kash is going to be able to deliver. We'll be able to get him confirmed. I'm really confident about that.
You feel comfortable voting for him at this point?
I do. I was comfortable beforehand. I've had the privilege of knowing Kash, and we've sat down and talked. Obviously, he's the one that uncovered what was happening at the FBI, the way they were being weaponized against President Trump, and the decisions that was happening during the dossier report and the Russia collusion. We've all got, you guys were all hoaxed by that. What was going on with Hunter's laptop? He was the one that started bringing that to light. So if you're going to clean up the FBI and actually get them focused on mission rather than politics, but them refocus them on actually putting America first, doing their job, Kash is the perfect person for that.
Are you confident that he's going to be able to stand up to Donald Trump?
What do you mean by stand up to Donald Trump?
I mean, typically the DOJ and FBI should operate independently from the executive branch. Are you confident that there will be that kind of law?
Maybe we should ask the Biden administration that same question. I think there is a lot that works and happens because of the administration. And, you keep in mind the DOJ was obviously weaponized. The FBI was weaponized against Donald Trump. There's no question. There's not a camera in here or a reporter in here that can say any different about that. What we're wanting to do and what Donald Trump wants to do, or President Trump wants to do, and what Kash wants to do is get the DOJ doing their job again, putting the American people first, getting the FBI doing their job again, keeping America safe, letting the agents do their job and stay out of politics, and just put the crimes and going after the terrorist organizations that's coming after us before they look at their political foes.
Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, Republican of Oklahoma, with reporters after meeting with Kash Patel, President-elect Donald Trump's choice for FBI director. Story from the Hill. Members of the special committee that investigated the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol are hitting back at President-elect Trump after he called for their imprisonment, saying the criminal conduct surrounding the rampage was committed by Trump and his supporters, not those who probed the tragedy afterwards. Congressman Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, member of the Select Committee, told The Hill in an interview, "In America, we jail people only for having committed criminal offenses that they are found guilty of by a unanimous jury of their peers. We don't jail people for doing their jobs and living up to their constitutional oaths of office." That was from The Hill. The former chair of the January 6 Select Committee, Congressman Benny Thompson, Democrat of Mississippi, spoke to reporters this morning.
Over
over the weekend, former President Trump in an interview suggested that January 6 members should be jailed. Do you have any reaction to that? And do you think that a preemptive pardon is necessary?
Well, I'll take it one at a time, okay? First of all, former to-be President Trump is absolutely wrong. There's nothing we did as a January 6th Select Committee that violates the law. Just because you disagree with the work of the committee is no way to threaten those members of the committee with jail. So obviously that's his opinion. As to whether or not President Biden does anything with respect to that, it's his decision. I'm comfortable with the fact that as members of Congress, we were doing our job. And as long as we do our job, there are certain guarantees that we have. And I look forward to enforcing those guarantees.
Now, Adam Schiff, he said that he thinks that a preemptive pardon isn't necessary. Do you agree with that? Do you think it's not necessary?
Well, he's a member of the committee. He's absolutely has his right. I think that's a decision that is left to the president.
And then what do you make of Kash Patel? How concerned are you if he were to get confirmed to hold this FBI position?
Well, again, I think people in positions of responsibility to carry out those responsibilities according to the statute. I don't think you have to go against individuals because you dislike them or they take positions you disagree with. As a nation of laws, clearly we stand strong on the principles of freedom of speech, assembly, and all those things that are guaranteed by the Constitution. And obviously I would expect someone in his position to do likewise.
Thank you so much, Congressman.
All right.
Congressman Benny Thompson, Democrat from Mississippi, former chair of the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, speaking to reporters this morning in the U.S. Capitol. Story from Fox News. New York Attorney General Letitia James said she will not drop the civil fraud case against President-elect Donald Trump as she waits for the appeals court decision arguing presidents are not immune from civil litigation. Trump and his attorneys demanded that James drop her civil fraud case against him, his family, and his businesses for the greater good of the country last month. Trump was ordered to pay $454 million civil fraud judgment in James' lawsuit against him. From Fox News. This is Washington Today. Story from AP. Dozens of drones have been spotted across New Jersey in recent weeks, including near sensitive sites such as military research facilities, which can be frustrating but don't appear to pose a public safety concern, Governor Phil Murphy stressed Monday. The FBI has been investigating reports about several mysterious nighttime drone flights that started occurring last month across central New Jersey and has asked the public for help. That was from AP. In Washington, 2 U.S. House subcommittees of the Homeland Security Committee held a hearing about this. The chair of one of those subcommittees, August Pfluger, Republican from Texas, questioned Robert Wheeler, FBI Critical Incident Response Group Assistant Director.
Let's just start with current events, and I'll ask an open-ended question. What is going on in New Jersey?
So, sir, the FBI and our Newark field office, along with the state and local partners there, the Bureau is actively investigating the situation you mentioned, just the unexplained sighting of drone activity over that part of New Jersey, including proximity to sensitive sites and areas of concern. So we do not attribute that to an individual or a group yet. We're investigating, but I don't have an answer of who's responsible for that, of one or more people that are responsible for those drone flights. But we're actively investigating. What the Bureau has done to aid our state and local partners is what we generally do, enlist the help of the interagency, enlist the help of the public. There's a tip line there, that 1-800-CALL-FBI, tips.fbi, for information from the public that could help us resolve this. It is concerning.
Is the public at risk? Is public safety at risk? Are we concerned that there are nefarious intentions that could cause either national security or a public safety incident that would put Americans at risk?
There's nothing that is known that would lead me to say that, but we just don't know, and that's the concerning part.
I think the fact that we have these unknown drones, UASs, that are flying over either critical or sensitive facilities is exactly why we're having this hearing.
It's Congressman August Pfluger, Republican from Texas, and witness Robert Wheeler, FBI Critical Incident Response Group Assistant Director, Joint House Homeland Security Subcommittee's hearing. And thanks for listening to Washington Today. You can find all of C-SPAN's programs on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and at cspan.org. It's also where you can locate this program as a podcast, and this program is also on YouTube. Just search Washington Today. And for more on the stories that are shaping Washington every day, get our daily email word for word. Sign up at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.